Tyler in California.
Hey, Jim and Matt, how's it going? Thanks for taking my call. Nice to talk to you.
You're welcome.
Pretty good. I'm going to apologize in advance because we're overtime, and I genuinely, and I don't mean this to be rude, I genuinely think there's a quick and easy answer to your question. And if there's not, then we'll probably postpone and talk about it another time. But go ahead and ask the question.
I'm fine with either of those, and maybe I'm wrong, and I'd love for you to tell me why I'm wrong. So I guess I think I'm confused, I guess, why I see that there's reproduction rights being on kind of both sides of the aisle in terms of genetically male and genetically female, and I don't see a lot of discussion about male reproductive rights in the secular humanist community. And like the people that I have talked to about it, I've not all the time, but on occasions been met with.
In what sense? In what sense do you not see the two things being equal?
They're not equal. One person has to carry a child for 9 months, and nobody gets to force them to do that, no matter how much they want a fucking baby. The sperm donor,
I agree with you, Matt.
the sperm donor doesn't have rights to another person's body. Neither does the fetus. So yes, there's an inequality in the rights, in the sense. Well, there's not an inequality in the rights. There's an inequality in the situation. But the rights are equal. I don't have a right to use your body. You don't have a right to use my body. I don't have a right to force you to do what I want. You don't have a right to force me to do what I want, what you want.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree, and genetically female reproductive rights are inextricably tied to bodily autonomy, and that's fundamental for any amount of freedom. And I get that no one should be able to tell anyone what they can do with their body. I guess what I'm trying to say is for a man, sex is consent to parenthood. And for a female,
no, it's not.
It's not.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Sex is never consent to pregnancy. Sex is not consent to parenthood. Sex is consent to the risk of those things. But there are remedies for both of those, including parenthood. You can go to court and have your parental rights removed.
Correct.
And that is the full extent.
In most states, that requires the signature of the mother for a man who wants to voluntarily relinquish.
And my answer to that is, well, that's unfortunate. Tough shit. It's not as unfortunate as forcing women to carry babies. I
agree.
And so knowing this is like complaining that you got in a car and you got out on the highway and you got a flat tire, and that doesn't seem fair to you. Well, I agree. It doesn't seem fair, but life's not fair.
Okay, so I guess my question for you would be, in a hypothetical, like, do you think men should not have the option to opt out of parenthood before the baby or the fetus is carried to term? Would you agree with that?
Well, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I have sex with a consenting partner and a pregnancy results, and
you are culpable.
And there's no remedy for that for the male. And do you guys
correct?
That's right.
Correct. There's no remedy for that because it's the woman's choice. It's her body. It's unfortunate.
Correct. No. Let me clarify. I don't think that I should, the male should be able to dictate whether or not she carries it to term.
Congratulations. Then we agree.
So essentially what you're asking is, in a bank robbery, should the getaway driver who just drives the car be charged with the same crimes as the guys who actually went in and robbed the bank?
I get where you're coming from. I don't know that that's analogous to what I'm trying to say.
I don't even want an analogy. I don't even want an analogy. We know that sex could result in pregnancy. If you're going to have sex, you have to take the precautions to make sure that what you don't want to have happen. However, nothing's perfect. And you're going into it knowing that if a pregnancy results and if the pregnant person does not terminate, you will be a parent, period. You have to go into sex knowing that.
I mean, I agree. I don't think very many people don't realize that's a potential outcome, but it confuses me why, like, okay, so let's say sex happens, pregnancy happens, mother wants to carry it to term, father doesn't, and
tough shit.
knowing that there's
tough shit. Literally, I've said it every time you've asked the question. What are you not getting? Tough shit. I
guess I didn't expect that.
Okay, well, tough shit. You agreed with me. You have no say in whether or not she carries it to term. You have no say. Nobody else has any say in whether or not the pregnant person carries that child to term. Period. So what are we talking about? Why are we still having a conversation?
So why can't or why shouldn't the male be able to opt out of parental responsibilities?
The male can, in some cases, opt out of parental responsibilities later on,
with the partner's consent, or they have to sign off.
Perhaps, depending on what the laws are. But the point is, you and I agree. You don't have any say over whether she carries it. The pregnant person carries it to term, right?
Right. Correct.
So what is your remedy for this fictional super desire scenario of where the man can somehow, or the sperm donor, the sperm contributor, should somehow not be held responsible?
It feels, I guess, like you, as the sperm donor, as soon as you consent to sex, you no longer have any say as to whether or not you become a parent.
Yes, congratulations. Thank you. You have now caught up. That's the unfortunate reality of biology, that it's one of the two people who have sex who are going to carry that child or not, and the other one, by participating in this, has put themselves in a situation where they are now a parent, or perhaps not a parent, but they're not the one with the say. If you know that going into it, what's the problem?
Okay,
you do realize you can have a vasectomy, and you do realize you cannot have sex with someone who's fertile, right?
Correct. Okay. But I mean, there's no such thing as absolute contraception or perfect.
Yes, there is. I can have sex. I can have sex with somebody who doesn't have a womb. I can have sex with myself. I can have sex with somebody who's had a, but I mean, you act like you're owed. You act like you act like you are owed consequence-free sex. I'm not owed sex.
Oversimplifying it, but
I'm not owed sex at all. I'm not owed consequence-free sex. I have to take responsibility. That's what being an adult is, what being a human being is. And so when I have sex with someone, if it's unprotected sex, or if there's always this risk in there, I do it knowing that I don't have a say in what they do with a fetus.
We both agree on that.
Then I don't understand where we don't agree. Are you just here to whine that it doesn't seem fair that you might do something and have to pay the consequences for it without a say in it?
No.
Because that's what it sounds like.
I wish it wasn't coming across that. I know. I wish it wasn't coming across that way.
Okay, so let's pause for a second, Tyler. Two people have sex. A pregnancy results. The one who's carrying the fetus decides to keep it.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is upset about that. What remedy would you suggest for them?
I think it should be easier to voluntarily relinquish your parental rights.
Okay. And relinquishing your parental rights means that you contributed to something that's going to result in a human being that needs care and funding, and yet you don't contribute to that. So you want to be a deadbeat father.
I don't think that's a fair way of looking at it. And I also think that kind of mentality is that's what contributes to this idea that men can't be victims too.
I don't see how you make that connection between men can't be victims. But
you're not a victim if you had sex.
Yeah, you're not a victim, and there are consequences to having sex.
Definitely.
So if there are consequences to having sex, then how is men being able to voluntarily terminate their parental rights not trying to achieve consequence-free sex?
Well, I see the sperm donor in that situation saying, I'm not financially able to support a child right now.
That's a load of fucking horseshit, and that's the most dishonest thing you've said. You have now constructed a fictional scenario in order to claim a hardship when you're talking previous to this moment. You were talking about a general principle, and now you're like, what if the dude's broke? That's fucking dishonest as hell, Tyler.
That could happen. I mean, this is a
hypothetical. Okay, you know what else could happen? He could die. He could be in jail. He could not be. You can make up whatever. We're talking about general rights. How dare you go to a very specific scenario? It's dishonest as fuck.
Right, and he's still.
We don't make laws based on who's broke.
Right, and he's still trying to have consequence-free sex.
Yeah. If he was broke, he shouldn't have been fucking.
Yeah, he's trying to have consequence-free sex.
If you are not in the position to potentially assume the risk and financial responsibility of having a child, you shouldn't be fucking. Just like if you are not insured, you shouldn't be driving a fucking car. If you are not willing to take the steps to be able to hold up your responsibility, your end of this, you shouldn't be doing the action, period. That's what it means to be a responsible adult.
Okay. I mean, I guess we disagree there. The second part of like where I think men's reproductive rights need improvement as well is like underage man gets raped by an older female, pregnancy results. There are many cases where the sperm donor in that situation has been legally mandated to pay child support.
And I would agree that in that particular case, that's probably not quite right because there's no consent involved.
I just Googled underage rape paid child support. I found a case. A state law said a child younger than 15 cannot consent with an adult under any circumstances, making this a rape case, and that yet the court forced him to pay child support. But when you say many cases like that, how many cases are there? What percentage of? See, you keep going to like this guy couldn't pay, or here's a really odd scenario, where this particular extenuating circumstance. I would agree that an underage sperm donor that was essentially raped by an older woman should not be held liable for that. That's rape.
We both agree there.
But I don't think that your claim that there's lots of cases like this, lots is a weasel word. I don't think anything like that happens with any sort of real regularity.
Okay. Well, the how often it occurs, was probably secondary to I wanted your opinion on in a case like that where you stood. So I guess we do agree on that.
Hang on, there's some jackass in chat who's saying I'm dishonest. What am I dishonest about, God's leg? Go ahead, type it in. Make sure you tag me. Anyway, that's all right.
So
I got distracted.
Okay, we good now? I'm kind of curious what he thinks you were dishonest about too, but
me too. And there's a bunch of people in chat who aren't very clued into this. It's really simple. Sex is complicated, and in cases of sex where pregnancy can result, there's one person who is going to carry that child to term or decide to terminate the pregnancy. Because of that, there are problems of undue influence where we have a concern that the person carrying a baby could be forced to carry it to term because of financial restrictions. Or worse, in some cases, the person carrying the child could be forced to have an abortion because we have allowed the other party to abdicate any responsibility. And so if someone gets pregnant and the person who had sex with them and got them pregnant decides, nah, I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want to contribute. I should be able to abdicate my rights as a parent. What that means is that could represent an undue influence to force the person carrying the child to terminate. And we have to safeguard against that as well.
You might be right there. That's something I hadn't considered. I just wanted to say, for clarity's sake, like maybe help you get a better understanding of where I stand on this. If I had a magic wand in my hand that I could wave and instate perfect reproductive rights for biologically female individuals, or perfectly just reproductive rights for biologically male individuals, females win. I wave the wand because bodily autonomy is inseparably involved in that, and I recognize that as being crucially important. So I in no way think that like female rights are taking over my male rights. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. I just think there's a conversation to be had there, and I'm confused as to why it's always met with vitriol. Or not always.
I don't see how there can be a conversation there, because you and I agree we have no say into whether or not the person who's pregnant terminates at all. And yet saying that we are going to bear no responsibility, or that we should have no legal responsibility, puts an undue burden on them, which changes that dynamic entirely. There's no solution to this. There's no solution to this that gives the person who had sex and doesn't want to be a parent any sort of remedy that doesn't dramatically impact the rights and freedoms of that other person that's pregnant.
I hadn't considered that, and you're right. Opting out of parental responsibility could potentially put a level of coercion on the individual actually carrying the fetus. Good point. I hadn't thought of that.
Wow. Somebody in chat says, maybe not dishonest, but you made the exact same argument to a man that you've condemned Christians for making about a woman. No, I fucking didn't. You're not paying attention. And there's a difference here between the person who's pregnant and the other person who got them pregnant. Pregnancy is not a trivial thing. Pregnancy permanently changes the pregnant person's life forever. Carrying a child to term physiologically changes that person. The fact that we have a lower infant mortality rate and other stuff isn't relevant. My argument across the board, which by the way, Tyler's in agreement with, is that we have no say in whether or not somebody else terminates a pregnancy. And because of that, that carries with it some weight in what decisions people are allowed to make and what remedies there should be under the law. If you change the law so that dudes, and it will be dudes, can just run around and fuck indiscriminately and bear no responsibility for anything, that is a worse world, period. That is a world where you have more unwanted children. That is a world where you have more unwanted abortions. I'm fine with wanted abortions, but you end up with more unwanted abortions there. Everything about that world is worse.
So I would never say that, like, I don't think legislation where you can just like, no, I passed, don't want anything. Obviously, I think there maybe should be, like, let's say a sperm donor does not want to be a parent, right? And
we should probably stop with sperm donors, because sperm donors in the strictest sense aren't going to be parents. But
right,
okay, fair enough. Well,
that is a legit firm sperm donor. By the way, my dinner has arrived and we've run overtime.
Okay.
If you guys have to drop me, I understand.
Yeah, we need to get rolling.
Very least.
Yeah, I'd like to eat my food before the ants do, but I'm grateful for the call and the discussion. It's just like when we say, hey, we're in agreement. And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, we're in agreement, but wouldn't it be nice? And every time I've had this conversation, it gets down, and congrats to you, Tyler, for seeing this when it was actually mentioned. But by and large, it's just this notion that, oh, I don't want to have to take responsibility. Okay, then you don't do the crime if you can't do the time, period.
And there is no action that we can take as humans that does not have consequences. And we are always responsible for those consequences, whether intended or unintended. All right.
Okay. All right. Well, then thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye.
Yep, thanks.
All right. That's it. We're out of calls.
Well, so first of all, it's bizarre to me watching chat.
Yeah.
I'm a skeptic and a humanist, and I would like to think that we're encouraging skepticism and humanism. But what I see in chat is a bunch of people, like somebody just said, oh, Matt's tipsy. Not the slightest bit. Not the slightest bit. I'm irritated. And okay, Tyler called in and had a question, but it's frustrating to me when somebody agrees with me and then pretends that there's, or pretend maybe not be the best word in this case, but then goes off on a side thing. It's irrelevant. It's like saying, wow, it's unfortunate that I can't breathe underwater. Sorry, you can't. Because what this really boils down to is someone saying, it's unfortunate that I can't fuck indiscriminately and not have to have responsibility for the actions that result from it. It's unfortunate that I can't throw a baseball around in the backyard, and if it happens to break a window, which is possible, I'm not held liable for it. That's what this gets to. And the undue influence issue of, okay, I don't want a baby. You do. Fine. You're on your own, bitch. That's the type of stuff that we see. Is you better abort that, or we're done, baby, and I'm leaving, and I ain't taking anything else. So all the people who are like, whatever dude bros and douche bros are sitting in the chat right now talking about how wrong I am on this, go fuck yourself. But before you do that, if you actually have a sound argument, a reasoned argument backed by evidence, and a way to change things so that you get this fictional scenario where you can fuck indiscriminately and not have to pay, you can email tv@atheist-community.org. That goes to myself and Jim and most of the people involved with the show. We'd be happy to interact with you. We appreciate everybody tuning in this week, except for those of you who are wrong, or those of you who are saying stupid things in chat right now. But you can come back in and be wrong and say stupid things in chat again next week. That's the way this works. We're all going to be wrong at some point. Today it was your turn. Anyway, on that note, thank you, Jim. Thank you to our crew,
thank you, Matt.
The crew who are there doing all this. And we will see you all next week.